The blue sun of Velthani Prime was setting for what might be the last time. Elder Zephyrin stood at the tall windows of the great temple, watching the orange glow paint the crystal spires of their capital city. In the distance, dark smoke rose from the outer districts where the evacuation ships had tried to land. Most never made it off the ground. The Vorthak had been hunting his people for 3 long years. World after world had fallen to their black ships and terrible weapons. The Shibur Kithara were not fighters. They were builders, thinkers, dreamers. Their blue skin could glow with inner light when they were happy. Their long fingers could shape energy itself into beautiful forms. But they could not make war. Zephyrin's assistant, a young female named Lyrian, approached with careful steps. Her light had dimmed to almost nothing, a sign of deep fear. Elder, the defense stations around our moon have gone silent. The Vorthak fleet will be in orbit within 6 hours. The old Kithara nodded slowly. He had lived for over 300 years, had seen the rise of their great civilization, had watched them reach for the stars and find wonder among them. Now he would see it all end. "How many ships do they bring?" he asked. "Our long-range sensors count over 200 vessels. War cruisers, troop carriers, mining ships to strip our world bare." Lyrian's voice shook. "Elder, perhaps we should surrender. If we offer no resistance, they might let some of our people live as slaves." Zephyrin turned from the window. The great temple around them hummed with soft energy. The walls made of living crystal that had grown over centuries. Every prayer, every hope, every dream of his people had been absorbed into these walls. The combined spiritual power of billions of Kithara souls resonated in this place. "No, child, we have tried surrender before. The Vorthak showed our colonies no mercy. They take everything and leave nothing but empty worlds behind." He walked toward the center of the temple, where a massive crystal formation rose from the floor like a frozen tree. "But perhaps there is another way." Lyrian followed him, confusion in her large, dark eyes. "What do you mean, Elder?" "Our fleet was destroyed at Nethys IV. Our allies have abandoned us. Even the great Zorvan Empire refuses to help, saying the Vorthak are too powerful." The crystal tree pulsed with inner light as Zephyrin placed his hands on its smooth surface. For generations, his people had used this sacred formation only for peaceful purposes. To commune with their ancestors, to share wisdom across vast distances, to celebrate the beauty of existence, never for what he was about to attempt. "The old laws say we must not use the great resonance for warfare or violence," Zephyrin said quietly. "But what if we use it for something else? What if we use it to call for help? Call to whom? Every civilization in this sector knows of the Vorthak. They are too afraid to act." Zephyrin closed his eyes and felt the power flowing through the crystal. The spiritual energy of his entire race, gathered over centuries, waited for his command. "Not to anyone in this sector, child. Not to anyone we know at all." The old Kithara began to channel his people's collective desperation into the crystal. The walls of the temple started to glow brighter as the accumulated prayers and hopes of generations fed into his working. This was forbidden by every tradition they held sacred, but their traditions had not prepared them for extinction. "Elder, what are you doing?" Lyrian backed away as the light grew intense. "I am sending our cry for help into the void, not to any specific world or people, but to whoever might hear and have the power to act." The crystal tree blazed like a star now, and Zephyrin's voice carried the weight of billions of minds. Someone somewhere who knows how to fight. Someone who will not turn away from those in need. The message that formed was not words but pure emotion and meaning, compressed into a transmission that would cross the galaxy in moments. It carried with it the images of Kithara worlds burning, children crying as their parents were dragged away, the beauty of their civilization being ground into dust under Vorthak boots. But more than that, it carried an offer. The Kithara would give everything they had learned, every secret of energy manipulation and crystal growing, every discovery they had made in their long climb to the stars. All of it would belong to whoever answered their call. The transmission burst from Velthani Prime like a wave of light, racing through subspace faster than any normal signal could travel. It passed by the homeworlds of a dozen species, but most, who felt its touch, turned away. The Vorthak were too dangerous, the risk was too great. It was better to hide and hope the destroyers would pass them by. The wave of desperate hope continued outward, growing weaker as it traveled, but still carrying its cargo of pain and pleading. It swept past the great trade worlds of the Galactic Center, where merchants calculated the cost of intervention and found it too high. It touched the edges of the ancient Zorvan Empire, where proud generals felt shame but still ordered their fleets to remain hidden. On and on the message traveled, until it reached a small spiral arm that most galactic maps marked as primitive and unimportant. Here it found a yellow star with 9 worlds, the third of which was covered in blue water and white clouds. The beings on this world called it Earth, and they were strange creatures who had only recently learned to travel between stars. They fought among themselves often, had a short lifespan, and built their ships from metal and fire rather than the elegant energy constructs favored by more advanced races. But when the message of the dying Cathara touched their minds, something remarkable happened. Instead of calculating the odds or debating the politics, the humans began to move. In orbital stations around their world, alarms began to sound. Military commanders who had been enemies just days before started talking to each other about response times and fleet positions. Engineers began pulling experimental weapons from storage. Shipyard workers started around-the-clock shifts to prepare vessels for a journey longer than any human had ever attempted. The message had asked for someone who knew how to fight. Earth was about to show the galaxy what that really meant. Back on Velthani Prime, Elder Zephyrin collapsed as the transmission ended. The effort had drained him completely and the crystal tree had gone dark and silent. Lyrian rushed to his side, helping him to a chair. "Did it work, Elder? Did anyone hear us?" Zephyrin looked up at the night sky, where the first Vorthak ships were beginning to appear as moving stars. Soon the bombardment would begin, and his people would face their final hours. "I do not know, child. I cast our plea into the darkness, and can only hope that somewhere, someone cares enough to answer." He patted her hand gently. "At least we tried. At least we did not simply wait for death to take us." Neither of them knew that their message had already been received, or that the impossible was about to happen. Help was coming, though not in any form the Cathara could have imagined. Captain Jake Morrison was drinking his morning coffee when the impossible happened. He sat in the command center of Orbital Station 7, watching the routine traffic of supply ships and patrol vessels moving between Earth and the Moon. It was a quiet Tuesday morning, the kind where the biggest worry was whether the coffee maker in Section C needed repair again. Then every screen in the station went white. The sound hit next, a deep humming that seemed to come from inside their heads, rather than through their ears. Jake dropped his coffee mug, watching it shatter on the metal floor as his mind filled with images that were not his own. Blue-skinned people with large dark eyes, their cities burning, children crying as dark ships filled their skies. Lieutenant Amy Chen at the communications desk was the first to recover. She shook her head hard and started checking her equipment with shaking hands. "Sir, this is impossible. Every receiver we have is picking up the same signal. Radio, subspace, even the old satellite dishes. It's coming through everything at once." Jake stood up slowly, his legs still unsteady from whatever had just happened to his brain. Around the command center, his crew was getting back to their feet, all of them looking confused and scared. "Where is it coming from?" Amy's fingers flew over her controls, but the numbers she was getting made no sense. "The computer says the source is in the Kepler 4042 system. That's over 1,200 light-years away, sir. Nothing can broadcast a signal that far and have it reach us this clearly." "Run it again." "I've run it 6 times. The answer keeps coming back the same." Amy pulled up a star chart on the main screen. A red dot blinked in the middle of empty space, impossibly far from Earth. "Whatever sent this message has technology we can't even begin to understand." Dr. Paul Williams arrived at the station 3 hours later, still wearing his pajamas under his lab coat. The government had pulled him out of bed and rushed him up from the surface as soon as they realized they were dealing with first contact. Paul was Earth's best expert on languages and communication, though he had never expected to use his skills on actual aliens. He sat in the station's main conference room with Jake and Amy, playing the signal over and over again through their speakers. But it was not really a sound anymore. Once they knew what to expect, they could feel the message directly in their minds, like a voice speaking in a language they had never learned, but somehow understood. "It's not words," Paul said, after his 10th time experiencing the signal. "It's pure meaning compressed into something that can cross space. The emotion, the desperation, it's all part of the message itself." Jake leaned forward. "What are they saying exactly?" Paul closed his eyes and let the alien thoughts wash over him again. "They're dying. Their people, their entire civilization, is being destroyed by something called the Vorthak. They've tried everything they can think of, but they're not warriors. They're asking for help from anyone who can fight. And they chose to ask us? No, not specifically us. They sent this message out into the void, hoping someone, anyone, would hear it and care enough to respond." Paul opened his eyes, and Jake could see tears there. "They're offering everything they have, all their knowledge, all their technology, to whoever will save them." Amy had been quiet during this exchange, but now she spoke up. "Sir, I've been analyzing the technical aspects of this transmission. The power required to send a signal this far, the precision needed to make it understandable to alien minds, it's incredible. These people have mastered technologies we're just beginning to dream about. Within 6 hours, every major government on Earth had been contacted. The President of the United States was on a secure line with the leaders of Russia, China, Britain, and a dozen other nations. The message was being studied by scientists in every major university. Military commanders were trying to understand what they were being asked to do. President Martinez called an emergency session of the United Nations. For the first time in decades, every nation on Earth agreed on something immediately. The vote was unanimous. Earth would respond to the alien distress call. Admiral Lisa Parker got the call while she was inspecting the new orbital shipyards above Mars. She had been overseeing the construction of Earth's first deep space exploration fleet, ships designed to search for signs of life among the nearby stars. Now those same ships would be used for humanity's first rescue mission. "How long do we have?" she asked the president during their video call. "Our best estimates say the aliens have maybe 2 weeks before their world falls completely. We need to get there as fast as possible." Lisa looked out at the ships being built in the yards around her. 12 destroyers, 4 carriers, 2 dreadnoughts, and the experimental vessel EFS Retribution with its new wormhole drive. None of them were completely ready for combat, but they would have to do. "I'll need volunteers for the cruise. This is a one-way trip until we can establish regular contact." "You'll have them. Every military branch is reporting more volunteers than they can process. Everyone wants to be part of this." The next 18 hours were chaos. Ships that were supposed to take months to complete were rushed through final assembly. Weapon systems that had never been tested in space were installed and armed. The experimental wormhole generator on the Retribution was pushed to its limits, creating a pathway across impossible distances. Chief Engineer Carlos Rodriguez worked, without sleep, making final adjustments to their weapons. Unlike most spacefaring civilizations, humans had kept their focus on kinetic weapons and nuclear warheads rather than energy beams. Their ships were built like flying fortresses, designed to take punishment and keep fighting. "If we're going to save these people," Carlos muttered as he calibrated the missile targeting systems, "we're going to do it the human way." The fleet assembled at the edge of the solar system, 13 ships carrying 3,000 volunteers from every nation on Earth. They carried no fancy energy shields or beam weapons like the science fiction movies. Instead, they had thick armor plating, rapid-firing railguns, and enough nuclear missiles to crack a moon. Admiral Parker stood on the bridge of the EFS Retribution as the wormhole generator powered up. The massive ring structure at the front of the ship began to glow, tearing a hole in space itself. Through the opening, they could see stars that no human had ever seen before. "All ships, this is Admiral Parker. We're about to make history. We received a call for help and we're going to answer it. These aliens asked for someone who knows how to fight. Let's show them what humans can do." The fleet moved forward into the wormhole, 13 Earth ships racing across the galaxy to fight for people they had never met. Behind them, Earth's communications arrays sent a simple message toward the distant Kepler 442 system. It would take over 1,000 years to arrive by normal transmission, but the meaning was clear. "Hold on, we're coming." The human fleet burst out of the wormhole like angry hornets from a disturbed nest. 13 Earth ships appeared in the Velthani system, their dark hulls scarred from the violent passage through folded space. Admiral Lisa Parker stood on the bridge of the EFS Retribution, staring at the tactical display that showed what they had come to fight. Over 200 Vorthak ships surrounded the blue world of Velthani Prime. The alien vessels were sleek and black, shaped like predatory fish, with glowing red marks along their sides. They moved in perfect formation, methodically bombing the planet's surface while smaller ships landed to collect whatever they wanted to take. "My God," whispered Lieutenant Commander Amy Chen, who had volunteered to serve as the fleet's communications officer. "There are so many of them." The largest Vorthak ship was a massive dreadnought that dwarfed anything in the human fleet. It hung in orbit like a dark moon, its weapons pointed down at the helpless planet below. Admiral Parker could see the flashes of explosions on the surface where the beautiful crystal cities were being turned to rubble. "Communications, get me a channel to their command ship," Parker ordered. "Let's see if we can do this the easy way first." The response came quickly. The main screen flickered to life, showing a creature that looked like it had crawled out of humanity's worst nightmares. Warlord Thaxmore was tall and covered in dark scales, with 6 arms and eyes like burning coals. When he spoke, his voice was like grinding metal. "Who dares interrupt the harvest of the Vorthak Empire? You fly primitive ships from a species we do not recognize. Leave now, or be destroyed with the rest of this worthless world." Admiral Parker stepped forward, her uniform crisp despite the long journey. "I am Admiral Lisa Parker of the Earth Defense Force. You have 10 minutes to withdraw your forces from this system and leave these people alone." The alien warlord made a sound that might have been laughter. "Earth? We have never heard of such a place. You bring 13 small ships against our great fleet. Are you insane or merely stupid?" "We're human," Parker replied calmly. 10 minutes, warlord. After that, we start shooting." Thaxmore's response was to cut the communication and order his fleet to destroy the human ships immediately. The Vorthak had conquered 17 different civilizations. They had never met a species that would travel across the galaxy to fight for strangers. These humans were clearly primitives, who had somehow stolen faster-than-light travel. The first Vorthak attack came in the form of energy beams that could melt through the armor of most ships. But human vessels were built differently. Where other species used energy shields and light construction, humans had chosen thick metal plating and redundant systems. The beams that should have cut through their hulls instead left glowing scars. "On the surface, all ships weapons free," Admiral Parker commanded. "Show them what we brought to the party." The human fleet opened fire with weapons the Vorthak had never seen before. Instead of energy beams, they used railguns that fired solid metal slugs at incredible speeds. The kinetic projectiles punched through Vorthak shields like they were made of paper. Nuclear missiles followed, each one carrying enough destructive power to level a city. Captain Steve Harrison commanded the destroyer EFS Defiant, and he pushed his ship straight into the middle of the enemy formation. His railguns fired continuously, turning 3 Vorthak cruisers into expanding clouds of debris. When return fire damaged his ship's armor, he just ordered his crew to keep shooting. "Hull breach in sections 4 and 6, reported his engineer. "We're losing atmosphere." "Seal what you can and keep fighting," Harrison replied. "We didn't come this far to give up now." The Vorthak quickly learned that human ships were incredibly hard to kill. When their hulls were breached, internal bulkheads kept them fighting. When their weapons were damaged, the crews repaired them under fire. When their engines failed, they used maneuvering thrusters to ram enemy vessels. Captain Maria Santos of UA, the destroyer EFS Vigilant, found herself surrounded by 5 Vorthak ships. Her vessel was heavily damaged, with fires burning on 3 decks and her main guns destroyed. Instead of surrendering, she ordered her crew to abandon ship while she set course for the nearest enemy dreadnought. Tell my family I died doing something. That mattered, she said over the radio as her ship accelerated toward the massive alien vessel. The collision destroyed both ships in a ball of nuclear fire that could be seen from the planet's surface. The Vorthak had never encountered a species that would sacrifice themselves so readily for others. Admiral Parker watched the battle unfold from the bridge of the Retribution. Her fleet was outnumbered 15-1, but they were holding their own. Human ships absorbed damage that would have destroyed any other vessel, while their weapons tore through enemy formations like a hurricane through a forest. The turning point came when Captain Harrison's ship was finally crippled beyond repair. The EFS Defiant had taken damage that would have killed most crews, but Harrison and his people kept fighting until their ship was nothing but a flying wreck held together by hope and determination. "Admiral, we're done," Harrison reported over the radio. His voice was calm despite the explosions in the background. "Hull integrity is at 15%. Life support is failing and we've got fires everywhere. But we still have our nuclear arsenal." Parker understood immediately. "Steve, you don't have to do this." "Yes, we do," Harrison replied. "We came here to save these people. Sometimes saving others costs everything you have." The EFS Defiant, its hull cracked and bleeding atmosphere, accelerated toward Warlord Thax Moore's flagship. The Vorthak tried to stop the damaged human ship, but nothing could slow Harrison's final charge. The destroyer crashed into the alien dreadnought and detonated every nuclear weapon in its arsenal. The explosion lit up the system like a new star. When the light faded, both ships were gone, and the Vorthak fleet's formation was in chaos. Their warlord was dead, and their most powerful ship had been destroyed by enemies they had dismissed as primitives. The remaining Vorthak ships tried to flee, but Admiral Parker was not finished with them. "All ships pursue and destroy. We don't let predators escape to hunt again." The battle became a running fight across the system as human ships chased down the fleeing aliens. The Vorthak learned that humans were relentless hunters who would not stop until every threat was eliminated. When the last enemy ship was destroyed, Admiral Parker opened a channel to the planet below. "This is Admiral Parker of Earth. The Vorthak fleet has been destroyed. You are safe now." The response came in the form of that same mental communication they had first received, but now it carried joy instead of desperation. The Cathara were singing in their minds a song of gratitude and wonder that no human would ever forget. Earth had answered their prayer, and the galaxy would never be the same. The first shuttle to land on Velthani Prime touched down in what had once been a beautiful garden outside the Great Temple. Admiral Lisa Parker stepped out onto alien soil, breathing air that smelled of flowers and something like cinnamon. The blue sun felt warm on her face as she looked around at the damage the Vorthak had caused. Crystal buildings lay in ruins, their beautiful surfaces cracked and blackened, but the Cathara people were emerging from their hiding places, their blue skin glowing with hope for the first time in years. They moved with grace, their long limbs carrying them in flowing motions that seemed almost like dancing. Elder Zephyrin approached slowly, supported by the young female called Lyrian. The old Cathara looked exhausted, as if sending that desperate message across the galaxy had drained something vital from him, but his large dark eyes were bright with wonder as he studied the human visitors. "You came," he said, his words forming directly in Parker's mind rather than through sound. "When we sent our plea into the void, we hoped for divine intervention. Instead, we received something we never expected." "What's that?" Parker asked, speaking aloud while her crew's translation equipment worked to convert her words into the mental language the Cathara used. "We received people who fight not for conquest or treasure, but because they believe the strong should protect the weak." Zephyrin's mental voice carried emotions that no human language could express. "In all our travels among the stars, we have never encountered such a concept." Dr. Paul Williams had arrived on the second shuttle, along with a team of scientists and diplomats. He was practically vibrating with excitement as he began the complex process of establishing proper communication between the two species. The Cathara's mental speech was fascinating, carrying layers of meaning and emotion that would take years to fully understand. "Admiral," Paul said after several hours of work, "what they're telling us is incredible. The galaxy is full of advanced civilizations, but most of them are passive. They've learned to hide from predators like the Vorthak rather than fight them. Parker nodded as she looked around at the damaged city. And the Vorthak just take whatever they want? There are dozens of species like them. Conquerors who prey on the peaceful races. The Kithara say that most civilizations consider it natural, like the way animals hunt each other. The idea of fighting to protect strangers is completely foreign to them. Over the following days, the Kithara shared their knowledge freely, just as they had promised. Their understanding of energy manipulation was centuries ahead of anything humans had imagined. They could grow crystal computers that thought faster than any electronic device. Their medicine could heal injuries that would be fatal to other species. Chief Engineer Carlos Rodriguez spent hours in their laboratories, his eyes wide with amazement. Admiral, this technology could change everything. Their energy systems are so efficient they make our fusion reactors look like campfires. And their material science, they can grow metal that's stronger than anything we've ever made. But the Kithara learned things from the humans too. They were fascinated by human engineering, the way Earth's people could build machines that kept working even when damaged. They studied human weapons with the curiosity of scholars examining a completely new branch of science. Your people build for war in ways we never imagined, Elder Zephyrin told Admiral Parker as they walked through the ruins of his city. Most species create elegant energy shields that fail when overloaded. You create armor that can absorb damage and keep functioning. It is a very different way of thinking. We've had a lot of practice, Parker replied sadly. Humans have been fighting each other for thousands of years. We've learned to build things that can survive in the worst conditions. Perhaps that is why you answered our call when no one else would. You understand that sometimes violence is necessary to protect peace. Within a month, human engineers and Kithara scientists were working together to design new ships. The combination of human military doctrine and Kithara energy technology created vessels unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. They had the armor and weapons of human design, powered by Kithara energy systems that could keep them fighting for weeks without resupply. Captain Jake Morrison arrived with the second wave of ships from Earth, now carrying the rank of Admiral. His flagship, the EFS Guardian, was one of the new hybrid designs. It looked like a human warship but glowed with the soft blue light of Kithara energy systems. Any word from the other species in this sector? He asked Parker during their first meeting on the planet. Dr. Williams has been in contact with several of them. They're all terrified that we're going to turn into conquerors like the Vorthak. The idea that we might actually be here to help is too strange for them to believe. That belief was tested when the distress calls started coming in. 3 different worlds sent desperate messages to Velthani Prime, reporting that Vorthak survivor fleets were attacking their colonies. Other predator species had heard about the destruction of Thaxmore's armada and were testing whether the humans would really fight for strangers. The answer came quickly. Within hours of receiving the first distress call, Admiral Morrison's fleet was jumping through space to respond. The human ships arrived at the besieged world of Krenthus Prime to find a small Vorthak fleet bombing the surface. The battle was over in minutes. Word spread quickly through the galactic communication networks. The humans had not been satisfied with saving just the Kithara. They were actively hunting down predator fleets and destroying them wherever they found them. Species that had lived in fear for centuries began to hope that maybe, finally, someone was willing to stand up to the bullies. Admiral Parker established the first human base on Velthani Prime, working with the Kithara to create a combined defense force. Ships from both species patrolled the trade routes, carrying a simple message to any would-be attackers. Earth was watching, and Earth would not tolerate the oppression of peaceful peoples. Lieutenant Amy Chen, now promoted to commander, stood in the communications center of the new base. Her screen showed reports from across the galaxy. 17 different species had requested human protection. The Galactic Council, a loose organization of the older civilizations, was debating whether to officially recognize Earth as a member. "Admiral, we're getting another distress call," she reported. "The Melkari system. They say raiders are attacking their mining colonies." Admiral Morrison looked up from the strategic planning table where he had been working with Kithara tacticians. How far? 47 light years. We can be there in 6 hours with the new drives. Morrison nodded and turned to his staff. Prep the Third Fleet for immediate deployment, and send a message to Earth Command. Tell them we're going to need more ships. Elder Zephyrin entered the command center, moving with the slow dignity of his great age. The old Kythera had become something like an ambassador between his people and the humans, helping to bridge the gap between two very different ways of thinking. "You are leaving again?" he asked Morrison. "Someone needs help. That's what we do." The elder's skin glowed with warm light, the Kythera equivalent of a smile. "When we sent our prayer into the darkness, we asked for salvation. Instead, we found something better. We found friends who will stand with us against the night." Morrison looked out through the transparent walls of the command center, where human and Kythera ships moved in formation through the alien sky. The galaxy prayed for help from the heavens, but sometimes the best answer to a prayer is people who are willing to take action. As the human fleet prepared to jump to another rescue mission, the message was clear to every predator species in the galaxy. Earth had arrived and the age of easy conquest was over.